We're going to start with you because DeMar DeRozan says it's not about the money. What options do the Lakers have to sign him?
If it's really not about the money and he wants to put his money where his mouth is and he wants to sign for the Lakers mid-level exception because that's the most they can offer any free agent that's not already theirs, that's less than $10 million.
Okay.
If he wants to sign for that, I'm sure the Lakers would pop out the checkbook in an instant. Other than that, you're looking at sign-and-trade options. I don't know that there's any reason that San Antonio, with all the cap room they have, would be looking at doing a sign-and-trade. After that, they don't have options. That's it.
Yeah, it's hard to, he did say that it's not about the money, but it's hard to think that he would want to maybe go that low, Brez. Do you realistically see this coming to fruition?
Yes and no. That's a huge pay cut from what he made last season, almost a $20 million dip if he wants to sign for about $9.5 million. But if you listen to what he said in this podcast, he said he wants to win. Remember, he was the guy who was traded for Kawhi Leonard, missed out on that championship in Toronto a few years ago. So maybe he's still feeling a little uptight about that. He wants to win a championship, and hey, he looked pretty good right next to AD and LeBron. A very good mid-range game. Love what he can do with his mid-range. Not a big three-point shooter. That's the only knock against him, but a pretty solid defender, too.
Watching the entire league and knowing how this goes, in 99% of the cases, I would say almost no shot whatsoever. The only thing is, this is the Lakers, and every once in a while, they pull one out of their hat.
Yeah.
So, is this that time?
Yeah. Is this another Carmelo, Gary Payton, sure, we'll come for nothing situation? Who knows? It's possible. I still wouldn't call it likely, but once in a while, the Lakers pull that off.
And he's an LA kid. And I also see the side of, that's the one thing, as he just mentioned, that he has yet to do is win a title. And that's the goal. We've now seen LeBron and AD play alongside one another for 2 seasons. So when you think of the fit, you kind of just touched on it. He thinks that it can be done. He said, look at what happened in Brooklyn.
Yeah, no doubt. And last season, if you look at what DeMar did in San Antonio, he was much more of a playmaker than he had been earlier in his career. Almost 7 assists per game. So he was almost like a point forward, kind of a smaller, shorter LeBron, if you will. So he's become pretty good, I guess, at dishing out assists. And that's something the Lakers want. As we've been talking about ad nauseum, 2 things they need. Better shooting, which he gives in the mid-range, but again, not really behind the stripe, just didn't take a lot of threes. And a very good playmaker, though. He definitely upped his assist game last season.
Yeah, 22, 4, and 7 on 50% shooting. You see the numbers right there. He's also a playmaker. He can create for himself. He can go get his own. So that's another narrative we talk a lot about, alongside LeBron James, taking that pressure off of him.
Yeah, and then you say, is he a better fit than Schroeder? Probably. You know, Schroeder really slumped in the playoffs, as we've talked about a lot. DeMar, just a better scorer. He's been a starter his entire career versus, a guy like Schroeder, in and out of that starting lineup, kind of a 6-man the last couple years before joining the Lakers and becoming their de facto starter at point guard.
And he's never won a title, but he's battle-tested. He's been at the playoffs several times.
He's played for Greg Popovich and survived to tell about it. So that's something right there.
That stint in San Antonio did him some good. I thought he was one of the least efficient players in the league, even though he put up numbers, not efficiently. I think that going to Pop in San Antonio did his career, his game a lot of good.
Yeah, a little reviving.
50% shooting, pretty good. Right
let's get you caught up with LeBron. Speaking of, looks like he is getting ready to get after it again with this tweet right here. Last week, best Pro-Am run to hoop at. Ooh. It's almost about that time. Now let's look at LeBron James.
Some good things on the court. He is now a restricted free agent. What does that mean for him?
Yeah, so a restricted free agent. So he's within his first 3 years in the league. Mm-hmm. The Lakers gave a qualifying offer, which means he's restricted. If another team tries to sign him to a contract, the Lakers have the option of saying, we'll match that and we'll keep him. And it gets even better. With a 2-year player, there's another kind of weird rule called the Gilbert Arenas provision.
Right.
And what that says is other teams are limited in the amount that they can offer him. So they can't offer more than the Lakers could match. The Lakers are in the driver's seat here.
Yeah, and indeed, if a team does sign him to an offer sheet, the Lakers have 2 days, 3 days to respond to it.
Yeah, they have a couple of days to respond to it. Now, it's a couple of days after the moratorium. I almost said July moratorium, but that's not the case.
That was last year, several years ago.
Yeah, but they have 48 hours after that moratorium ends to match the contract and keep him. So again, the Lakers can be pretty sure that they're going to be able to control the rights for Talen Horton-Tucker going into next season.
Larry, you're a guy who has his fans. In fact, we have a tweet for you, more THT. It's from Impossible. If THT signs an offer sheet and the Lakers match, will the Lakers be, there's a big phrase these days, hard capped?
Yeah, so the hard cap is one of those things that scares a lot of people.
I'm scared right now.
Many teams, you look at it, you're kind of sweating. And
right.
So a lot of teams work within it, and it's no problem. It's only when you run up against it and you can't make any moves that it's really a problem. Now, the whole premise is that if you're above a certain amount, you don't have certain exceptions to use. But conversely, that means if you are below and you use those exceptions, you can't go above that amount. That's the hard cap. So a hard cap happens when you receive a player in a sign and trade, or when you use the entire mid-level exception or the biannual exception. Now, the Lakers used that one last year. They don't get it this year. So it's only the full or getting a player in a sign and trade that would hard cap them. Matching a restricted free agent, anything else, no hard cap.
No problem.
Right.
Away from the Lakers for a minute, you have some business ventures coming up in Vegas pretty soon. Talk to us about that.
I do. Thank you. So
Access Sportsnet Lakers, the Emmy Award-winning gang is back together. Big Game James Worthy, our Hall of Famer. Mike Bresnan, our Laker insider. Our MVP, Allie Clifton. I'm Chris McGee. I would like to say, hey, how's the summer going? Everybody doing well? But you know what? There's no time for small talk. Let's get right into it because big news, NBA draft night, and the Lakers didn't make a pick, but they made the biggest move of the offseason so far, agreeing to trade for Wizards guard and LA native Russell Westbrook. The Wizards will receive Kuzma, KCP, Montrez, and the rights to the number 22 pick, Isaiah Jackson, which has since been dealt to Indiana. The Wizards will also send Lakers 2 future second-round picks. Russell Westbrook is going to be a Los Angeles Laker after all these years. Remember, he played his high school basketball here. He went to UCLA. I'll start with you, Big Game James. Your thoughts when you heard the trade. You like it. You're sold on it. What were some of the things going through your head?
He's a homeboy, and he's back home. And I'm totally sold on it, 100%. To be able to acquire a player like Russell Westbrook at this stage of his career, where he pretty much knows what he wants, what he needs to do, and to land him with LeBron at LeBron's stage of his career, he's a closer. He's a proven closer, a proven guy that comes every night, plays hard. When he gets going, he's not a great three-point shooter, but he puts so much pressure on the defense, and he can pull up for those 15-footers. But I think his leadership, let's say LeBron's out of the game, or I think it's someone that, we can rely on with the ball in his hands. I think it's a great mix. He wants to win a championship. He really wants to win a championship. And I think that's a big deal for him, coming him. So he's going to do whatever it takes, whatever attitude he needs to have, whatever game he needs to play. I think he and LeBron kind of understand each other. I think it's lethal that we get a player like that. He's got 2 hearts in his chest.
Yes, he does.
And he doesn't take nights off.
No, he does not.
Yeah, great calls, James, right there for sure. This guy just doesn't give up. He never stops. He will definitely help the Lakers' pace, which was a pretty pedestrian 16th in the NBA last season. That's going to change right now. Don't forget his offensive rebounds, his defensive rebounds, another thing that he will help immediately with the Lakers. Again, they were 16th in rebounds. Not great, very mediocre. Very good defender still. Very high-end defensive player. One of the fastest players I have ever seen in my life, and he is now a Laker. I guess not officially. It's going to happen in about a week officially, but both teams have agreed to it. A huge pickup for this franchise.
I mean, he averages triple doubles throughout the whole season. And Allie, I guess, listen, you're going to go on social media. You're going to talk to friends. Everyone's going to have an opinion. What box does it check? How does he fit? All that stuff, and we'll dive into it. But one thing is clear. It is hard to get a future Hall of Famer on your team when you already have a couple others on there. And the Lakers did that.
I think the one thing, because when you talk about boxes it checks, there's a lot of people talking about the one box that has been preached about, not just this offseason, but for so many off seasons. When you're surrounding a great like LeBron James, and then you have the talent and the superstar caliber player in Anthony Davis, shooting is a must. And so when you pick up Russell Westbrook and you want to say, but he can't shoot. Excuse me. He is a future Hall of Famer. 4 of the last 5 seasons, as we know, he averages a triple-double. He is an enforcer. You talk about the pace, the tempo. What can't this guy do? The stability, the way in which he approaches the game, you talked about it. He will not cheat you with effort. This is huge. I said it last week on the show.
You did.
I struggled to step aside and not be excited about this. I'm over the moon, through the sun. The one thing that I will say that I'm really glad about all of this is on the podcast, you were willing to give up yourself for another guy on the West Coast. And we got Russell Westbrook and get to keep you.
And I'm staying. I was trading myself and Zeffy, my dog. We were going to leave for 2 years to Portland. We did talk about that. I said I would have done that, but you know what? I get to stay, and we have a future Hall of Famer. I think that is fantastic. Big game, James, you guys have all kind of touched on it. On a nightly basis, for a team that's trying to win a championship like the Lakers, what does he bring you? Attitude
and perseverance every night. He's not going to give up. He's going to put so much pressure on you that I don't think he makes defenses give up, but I think he just makes them say, damn, I don't know what else to do, because he comes at you so hard every second he's on the play. He's a shot maker. He's a closer. He can finish at the rim. I love his 15-foot range, the way he can back you up and pull up. So I also think he's led. You see what he did with Washington this year? At the end of the season, he was, coming on strong. And I just think he's a leader. I think he knows what LeBron wants. In LeBron's last few years, LeBron definitely knows that Rex wants a championship. So, yeah, he gives you another closer. You got LeBron, you got AD, and now you have the trio together.
Yeah, he might not give the Lakers one of the boxes that need to be checked, shooting. Okay, 31% from three-point range last season. That's not that great. But he fulfills the playmaking piece. So much pressure on LeBron last season, especially when AD went down in February. He had to be the guy to make this offense go. Yeah. Now he can cruise a little bit. Now you have a guy like Russell Westbrook, who gets, pretty much a triple-double every game. By the way, just a few months ago, back in May, set the all-time NBA record with his 182nd triple-double, passing Oscar Robertson, and also 11.5 rebounds a game. For a point guard, only 5 guys in the entire NBA had more rebounds than that. That's pretty strong stuff right there.
Something James said hit me, and I want to throw it to you because you already kind of touched on what the Lakers get on a nightly basis, and I agree with what both of you said. Russell Westbrook still desperately wants a championship ring. That's why he plays. How important is it for teams to add guys like that to a roster that already has championship rings? A guy that's hungry and still cares about the regular season and still has the eyes on the prize, and he's never been more hungry. It's important in your eyes?
I think absolutely. I think it's a renewed energy, if you will, that you're adding to the locker room. He's surrounding him with guys who are proven winners, who he apparently, as we see in different exchanges throughout the course of the season, on social media or whatnot, who he believes in to take him to that place. Russell Westbrook's also a guy, let's not forget, that during his time in OKC was up 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals to go to the finals, who has been right there.
Right there.
And so I think, as we've all talked about, someone who wants to give it and will give it every single day, night in and night out, allowing teammates around him, just as much as he makes them better, to make him better. I always say that about leaders. The ones that are willing to lead also will be led. And I think that's something that Russell can bring to this locker room, but also guys in the locker room that are already here can help take him to a place that he has not been.
Yeah, he made the finals back in 2012, lost in 5 games to Miami. Obviously, LeBron's team right there. Let's not forget the offense here. When the Lakers lost to Phoenix, there were a couple dead spots in some of those games for the Lakers. They went 8 minutes without a basket.
Too many times.
Too many times. Yeah. I mean, a lot of stressing out on offense. Just not enough movement, not enough points. And that's all going to change because this guy is a human highlight film. I'm not sure how they're going to be defensively. You say goodbye to some good pieces. KCP, Kuz, underrated defender out there. Trez, tough guy down low. But they're going to score like 140 points every night, and I don't care about the defense right now.
You know who loved the droughts the Lakers would go in against the Phoenix Suns? Brian Bergen, our director, the
director,
the Suns fan that flew to every single game.
He didn't mind the droughts.
He's chirping in the ear already.
Laker fans love the droughts or hate the droughts, so now it's over now.
By the way, look at these numbers, James. You always talk about guys, you know, from the old school days, legends of the game. You yourself are one of those legends of the game. We talk about guys that will be in the Hall of Fame. You don't just throw that around lightly. You're one of those guys. Players with 20,000 points and 8,000 assists in NBA history. It's LeBron, it's the Big O, it's Gary Payton, and it's Westbrook. So big game, James. The Lakers have a new big three, and we wondered how they would reload and how he fits with AD and LeBron. There was lots of talk about Buddy Hield because of the shooting and what the Lakers wanted to surround those guys with. He doesn't check that box, as you guys all said, but boy, does he check the others, correct? When you look at those numbers.
And he gives you enough twos to compensate.
Yes.
Layup after layup, 8-footer.
He averages 22.
So, yeah, with Westbrook, if it were any other player coming in, you know, we'd be like, yeah, he needs to hit some threes. He's streaky, but he gives you so much more in his game, and a lot of it is in the energy department. He just wears you down. But the one thing, too, that I think he's learned from, look, he's played with Durant. You know, he's played with Harden over at OKC. He's been around and played with some superstar players. And I think at this stage of his career, he's learned from that. And I think that's going to level him out a little bit. He's not going to try to, like, overdo it or, you know, overexert himself. He's going to come in here and realize exactly what it is he has to do. He's not going to lose his tenacity, though. He's going to be coming hard. But I think coming here with LeBron, AD, seeing how they won, AD came in here and won. And he said, yeah, I can do this. I think it's going to level him out. I think it's perfect timing for him.
And we've seen how he fits with other superstars. And we were talking before the show about guys that have played with him. Just Bradley Beal recently calling him one of his favorite teammates of all time. So we know he's a team guy, and LeBron and AD are going to get along with him. Allie, you and I've talked about, well, the pieces that are going to fit with that. We kind of want to see what that's going to look like. But when it comes to just AD and LeBron, how does he fit?
I think pace and tempo is going to be the biggest key and the biggest attribute that Russ can bring. Every single possession. I think you often heard it last year or a season ago, if you will, that they weren't playing up tempo enough. You know, they weren't out in the open floor really utilizing their strengths as much as they could. This guy provides that for you. I also think this, as much as we want to sit here and say that Russ coming to this team has to adjust, I think that we might see a different version of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. You might see a little bit more of Anthony Davis at the center spot. You might see LeBron James playing the power forward a little bit more because he's got a guy like that he can count on, that he can trust and knows can stabilize the offense. Yeah. And so I think that's an angle which I don't think a lot of people are thinking about and talking about just yet. But that's where I would like to see it change.
Yeah. And Brad's brought up an interesting point earlier. His rebounding, okay? That fast break is going to start as soon as it touches his hands.
Rebounding guards.
He's not going to be looking to outlet pass anybody. He might take 3 or 4 dribbles, get it going, and then give it up. But I think that with his rebound ability, and he's a guard that understands that guards don't box out, guards don't rebound, and he gets a lot of them on both ends. So when he gets it, their fast break is in gear immediately. So we'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah, that's a great point. Brez, before we go to break, why can't this trade be made official?
Yeah, great call. It's not going to be made official till August 6th, which is next Friday. A couple things going on here. Primarily, Kuzma. He's still under contract for about $3.5 million. That changes next week. When his extension finally kicks in, he'll be up to $13 million a year. The NBA has very stringent trade rules, very strict. You can't salary dump. You can't trade $40 million for $20 million. You got to be within 80%.
Gotcha.
So once Kuzma goes from 3.5 to 13,
that's a big deal.
The teams are within 80% of the exchange salaries. It can be done when the moratorium is lifted.